Quarterback injuries that we're looking at here, the big one is obviously Jalen Hurts, but Colt McCoy is out, so you are McSorley going to have to deal with no Colt McCoy being bad for the Cardinals offense. That joke, I ruined it. But in any event,
I kind of caught it.
No Kyler Murray as well. He's out for the season, so it could be bad news for DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown. Jalen Hurts now expected not to play at this point. Ryan Tannehill probably not going to play as well. Lamar Jackson, we hope to have him out there. If he plays, you're starting him. If he's out, Tyler Huntley maybe could be a decent replacement option against the Falcons if you're stuck, but we know that's gone, and Brock Purdy is expected to play. So Nick Sirianni saying that's going to be Gardner Minshew. So here you go.
He said Gardner Minshew's going to start and Gardner Minshew will be ready. I believe him. Gardner Minshew's been ready just about every time he's started in the NFL, and that includes some really terrible situations. You look at his career as a starter, 22 games as a starter, right around 7 yards per attempt, right around 245 yards per game. That's just about an average NFL quarterback, only he's done that as a rookie in a terrible situation with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now he's going into this game with A.J. Brown, with Devontae Smith, with Dallas Goedert. I think he's a top 10 quarterback with 25-point upside.
Most importantly, he's got that offensive line in Philadelphia, and you know that the best part of that Cowboys defense is their pass rush. They're going to try and get after Gardner Minshew, but I think that offensive line will give him time to make throws downfield, and the secondary has been a major concern for Dallas over their past couple of games, and they lost Leighton Vander Esch, a linebacker. That's somebody who covers tight ends. With him gone, Evan Ingram had a field day against a defense that didn't allow anything to tight ends this season. It's Dallas Goedert's turn this week from a guy who we caught 2 touchdowns from in a game that they played together with last year.
It could be a game where they run the ball, though, because we did hear Nick Sirianni say we got to get Miles Sanders going. That squeaky wheel could be happening for Miles Sanders, but Vander Esch being there could obviously benefit him as well.
Sure.
And the line is expected to still be a high-scoring game. 46.5 points right now is the expected total, so they are expecting the Eagles to still score. So good spot for Gardner Minshew. Running back injuries that we're looking at, you got Nick Chubb not practicing on Wednesday, and Tuesday and Wednesday, so we'll hope to get a report that he's fine because it's a great matchup against the Saints in the snow. Najee Harris should be able to go. Kenneth Walker, obviously another one we're keeping an eye on there, and DJ Dallas would be probably the replacement option if Kenneth Walker can't go. The other running backs we expect to be out there, Christian McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, Latavius Murray worth keeping an eye on, I guess, a little bit, and Jeff Wilson's another one to monitor just in case he does return. We could see what that means for Raheem Mostert. So if there is no Nick Chubb, Dave, how good could Kareem Hunt be?
I could talk about how good Kareem Hunt could be, but Chubb's practicing on Thursday.
Oh, good.
And that means that he is on track to play. There is a little bit of a concern that Nick Chubb, who hasn't been great in his last couple of games, might not see every single snap, certainly could play in that neighborhood of 60% of the snaps like we've seen from him over the past couple of weeks. So there is a little bit of appeal for Kareem Hunt, but not enough for me to say that you should start Kareem Hunt. Chubb is a top 12 type of fantasy running back, amazing matchup, and he should get a lot of opportunities because of the weather in Cleveland.
In the event that Kenneth Walker does not play, DJ Dallas would be what?
He would be in that slightly above Zach Moss, I would say, in that number 3 running back range, because you still wouldn't necessarily expect him to receive all the touches, and there's a pretty good chance Seattle's playing from behind and chasing the score against the Chiefs in this game. He would be the pass catching back, so that would help him a little bit, but he would be somewhere in the RB 30 range. I wouldn't love him.
And you obviously love Walker this week, top 15.
I love Walker as long as he's okay. I'd love to see him get a full practice in. But yeah, I think this is a fantastic matchup against the Chiefs, and he can catch the ball a little bit as well.
Did have 4 catches last week, saved his production with a 32-yard reception in the loss to San Francisco, when the Chiefs allow the most receptions to running back. So without Tyler Lockett, there could be a good spot for him. First list of wide receiver injuries that we're looking at here. Tyler Lockett is out, dealing with the finger injury. Deebo Samuel out as well with the knee and ankle injuries. Amari Cooper should play, but obviously we've told you to avoid him. Chris Olave dealing with the hamstring injury. We'd like to avoid him as well. Deontay Johnson's a story worth keeping an eye on. Chase Claypool, we're going to avoid him. Nico Collins, we'll talk about the Texans wide receivers and see the other injuries there in terms of Parker and Landry. So, Kenny Pickett starting. We know that has not been good for Deontay Johnson. So we assume at this point Johnson's going to play. If Johnson does play with Kenny Pickett, Heath, what do we think about just everybody there? George Pickens and Pat Fryer.
Yeah, Johnson falls back to be a low-end number 3 wide receiver instead of a high-end number 3 receiver like he was at the beginning of the week. But I do think we saw some signs in the last couple of starts for Kenny Pickett that they had gone away from trying to force-feed George Pickens into that number 1 role. Deontay Johnson was getting a 30% target share even with Kenny Pickett, so he would still be my favorite Steelers wide receiver. I'd see Pickens as more of a boom-bust flex option, very little floor for him, and I'm a little bit worried about Pat Freiermuth, even with Pickett coming back in a cold weather game where I don't think the Raiders score any points. I'm not sure there's enough pass attempts for him to see more than 3 to 4 targets.
I'm okay with Freiermuth. I think he can be a low-end starting tight end. He was hurt last week. That was part of the problem why he didn't even get a target. He didn't play his normal amount of snaps. He's practicing in full this week. He feels a little bit better. And he spoke this week about the kinship he had with Franco Harris. Both of them Steelers, both of them Penn State alum. They had a connection. I think Freiermuth's going to try and play a good game for him against a team that Franco Harris has done some things against, the Raiders.
Franco Harris actually announced him at the draft, so that was a cool moment, I'm sure, for Pat Freiermuth as well. Dave, in terms of the Texans receiving core, as we could take a look at the second list of wide receiver injuries where Chris Moore has been limited, Brandon Cook practicing in full now, and we've seen Chris Moore's target spike, 20 targets over the last 2 games. Nico Collins probably trending in the direction of missing the game again. Got a sneaky feeling that Brandon Cooks might be decent this week because of the matchup is so bad against the Titans, and he was ramping up last week and looking good in practice.
Right, and then he didn't end up
still
playing.
The better pedigree, obviously, than Chris Moore. So if you're looking at you need to start a Texas receiver, who would it be?
I guess it would be Brandon Cooks, but I really don't feel good about it. I know the matchup's great. I know that the quarterback is kind of blah, and I know that Brandon Cooks has been bad pretty much all season long. I think he'd have to be no better than a low-end number 3 wide receiver if I rank him at all, and Chris Moore would fall by the wayside. I probably wouldn't even roster him.
Based on the weather, I would start Brandon Cooks over Amari Cooper this
Sure,
week.
sure.
And Chris Olave for me.
Yeah, and same with me, and Chris Olave as well. So we'll see what happens there in terms of the Texans wide receivers, but Brandon Cooks practicing full. If he's available on your waiver wire, you might want to take a flyer on him just in case. So here are the other injuries that we're talking about here. And the big one, Heath, is if Courtland Sutton does play, not necessarily because we're starting him, but Jerry Jeudy's been fantastic the last couple of weeks without Sutton on the field. So faith in Jeudy if Sutton plays.
He would still be a starting wide receiver for me. When those two guys have both been 100%, Judy's been the clear best option. It's basically been, is Jeudy 100%? Does he play 80% of the snaps? When he does, he scores at least 13 PPR fantasy points. I'm starting Jerry Jeudy as a number 2 wide receiver, a high-end number 2 if there's no Sutton, a low-end number 2 if Sutton is back. I don't have interest in Sutton except for in that George Pickens boom-bust flex range.
And Russell Wilson is going to start for the Broncos after dealing with the concussion last week, so we'll see how that impacts the entire passing game. But again, the last time Jeudy and Wilson were on the field, it was 2 touchdowns of the 3 that Jeudy scored 2 games ago against the Chiefs. Russell Gage has scored 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games, 2 touchdowns last week without Julio Jones on the field, but Jones practiced on a limited basis. It seems like he's going to play against the Cardinals, so does that mean Russell Gage is bye-bye?
Russell Gage is bye-bye, and Russell Gage really may have never even should have been said hello to in the first place. He had 4 for 35 and a touchdown on the very final drive of the game. It was garbage time. I don't think there's going to be much garbage time this week against Arizona. It's either going to be a low-scoring competitive game or it's going to be a Bucs blowout. It really depends on how Trace McSorley is going to play. Either way, I think Tom Brady's still going to look for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin more so than Russell Gage.
And I've not downgraded Gage for Julio playing yet, just because we've seen a lot of times over the last 2 seasons when Julio Jones has been a partial participant in practice throughout the week and then not played.